Welcome to This Got Me Thinking, where clarity comes from conversations and the connections that spark from it. I am your host, Chris LaFay, and today I have the pleasure of chatting with Justin Dees. Sometimes the universe has to hit you over the head with rejection after rejection before it can give you exactly what you need. Justin thought that he needed any of these current corporate jobs that he was actively chasing. But what he actually needed was to stop running long enough to figure out what he was running towards. A toxic work environment, a string of job rejections, an unexpected opportunity in Paris created the perfect storm for Justin to discover that the pause he was avoiding was exactly what would change everything for him. And I'll let Justin tell his story. So tell me about Halloween Day 2018, or even a little bit before that. Like, let's actually set the stage a little before. What all was happening before Halloween of 2018?
2018 was definitely one of the most challenging and difficult years of my life. Um, Started off what I thought was going to be a good year, but very quickly things deteriorated at work. Um, some new leadership took over, and I was like, okay, like, well, we'll see where this goes. I'm excited. Um, and it like I said, very quickly started to see the writing on the wall that, this is not going to go well for me or for any of the people that are working in my department. The person who came in, they had these really I don't know, grandiose plans. Like they were going to completely revolutionize this company. But that was not going to happen. And so they were, really, angering a lot of people. They were doing things kind of crazy, and they wanted to break us of things. And it slowly became a very toxic environment. A lot of, you know, finger pointing, and people just it just was not, it wasn't good, right? And so I'm kind of getting to the point, and I was like, all right, I think I'm ready to go. This is kind of, um this clearly is not working. I mean, it was getting to the point where, fellow coworkers would come to me almost on a daily basis with, and tears in their eyes, and they're
Oh my God.
upset. I mean, people literally breaking down, because of what was going on and how we were being treated. And again, there was nothing, to us, there was nothing wrong with what we were doing. We had always, before leadership, everybody was happy with everything that, our project, processes and procedures were great. Everything was working, so we were just so confused. But so I just decided, I was like, all right, you know what? I'm not, why am I going to keep putting up with this? Like, I'll just find a new job.
Yeah.
And me and Chris, I cannot tell you how many interviews I went on, how many people I talked with, because of course this was pre-COVID, and so,
Oh
man,
yeah.
getting an interview, I mean, it felt really easy. Like, I mean, as long as your resume was solid, you at least were going to get a phone call.
Yeah.
Very rarely did I just, hear nothing, which nowadays that is extremely common.
Uh-huh.
But
Yes, exactly.
but back then, so I'm getting phone calls and I'm getting interviews, and I mean, I'm talking, these are some very well known, Fortune 200, even some of these companies, Fortune 500, great, a lot of them Atlanta based, huge corporations. I was really excited, getting lots of traction, and and so many of them, man, I was going deep into the interview. I mean, just, 2 3 interviews, doing projects, and not a single one of them offered me a job, right? And so that continued throughout the year, and gets to October, and this would have been like, it was what I thought would have been a dream job for me, at a local university. Was really excited, was going to be able to do marketing, for the different colleges and within the university, and was we're going to do a lot of branding work. It just it was going to be a great fit. And I thought, well, my goodness, they're definitely going to pick me. The hiring manager kept telling me, like, she was probably sharing more than she should, but just essentially telling me that she really liked me, and was like, just really giving me all of the confidence of, okay, well, like, I think I like, this is it. I'm finally going to get this one. Did a project for them, had to build out how I would spend their dollars on a campaign, and put a lot of time and effort into this, right? Halloween morning, I don't know, it was probably like 10:30. Get an email in my inbox. See, it's from the hiring manager. And my heart, I'm like, oh my gosh, yes, here we go. Like, she's gonna say, Let's meet." And opening sentence, she's like, "Justin, I loved you. Your project was so great. Yada yada yada. However, we've decided to go in a different direction." And so I got up and I snuck over to one of our little conference rooms, and I just sat in there and was really on the verge of tears, because I just was feeling, you know, I was just feeling like such a failure, right? Like, I had gone to this place in my career where, as I mentioned earlier, it became so toxic, Chris, that literally, while I would be driving into work most mornings, I would be like, "Man, maybe I can just, like, get into a little fender bender. Maybe I'll just, like, kind of tap the person in front of me so I don't have to go into the office today." Right? That's where I was mentally.
Wow.
I would get on the elevator and take the floors up, and each floor, because we were pretty much on the top floor, and
Mhm.
every, tick tick tick, this overwhelming feel of nausea would overcome me, because of how much I was dreading going into this place.
When going through all of this, how did you ground yourself during this season to make sure that the decisions that you were going to make, which we'll get to in a minute, were not based off of fear, crazy emotion swings, etc.?
So my faith plays a huge role in keeping me grounded, and also my wife. With both of those things, that is what helped me not hit the car in front of me, right? Like, like, that was the stuff that I'm like, okay, like, I know this is for a season, right? Like, I knew it wasn't gonna last forever. But man, Chris, when you're going through something, when you're in a storm, when you are in that, difficult thing, that you're going through in your life, it just feels like there's no end in sight, right? But what I've tried to live my life in such a way that I tell myself, all right, I need to find purpose in the pain. I need to find purpose for this challenge, right? In any case, so here I am, upset. It's Halloween. I'm gonna have fun with my wife and our friends, and hand out candy to the kids in our neighborhood, and you're like, whatever. I feel like, I'm like, okay, I can get through this. As devastatingly as getting that news was, I can do this, right? Like, whatever, it's fine. Even though as horrible as I'm feeling right now, I know, something is gonna happen. The next day, 24 hours, literally 24 hours after I had gotten the thanks but no thanks email, my wife texted me while I was in the office. I believe it was a Friday, this was a Thursday, and she says, "Hey, I really need to talk to you. Can you go to a conference room so I can call you?" And I was like, "Oh, okay. Like, hopefully everything's okay." I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, sure." So I go to the same conference room that I was in the day before, on the verge of a mental breakdown myself. And she calls me and she says, "Okay, I know this sounds absolutely crazy, but my boss just came in and talked to me and asked me um, if I could go help their office in Paris, France for 3 months, you know. And I sat there for a second and I didn't, I kind of was collecting my thoughts and I'm like, okay, so I'm about to have to spend the next 3 months without my wife while she's going to be in, you know, Paris, and I'm going to be stuck here at this job that I hate, right? And so then the next day, my wife is like, "Hey, because I didn't get a chance to talk to her that night, things happened," and she was like, "All right, let's go to lunch," because our offices were very close to each other. So we're having lunch at Moe's, and I'm sitting there, and she can tell, like, and, and she's like, "Hey, Justin, you're quitting your job and you're going with me. Like, we are doing this. You're not gonna stay in this job, like, financially,
Yeah.
like, you can do that. Like, you're cut, like, we're doing that." And I sat there and I'm like, okay, like, we can. Like, you're right. We can do this. We can do this. I can quit my job. And so we do it. I go and I quit and we we uproot our lives for those 3 months, and this is the first time in my life, Chris, since I'd been 16 years old that I hadn't had a job. And so while I was in Paris, this was my chance and the first time ever to actually just, like, stop. Like, stop for a moment, you know? And it's so crazy because if we had had a kid, if I had got any of those jobs that I so desperately wanted and felt like I needed to have, this never would have happened. My wife would have, we wouldn't have done it, right? Like, she would have said no, like, it wouldn't have worked. Um, and man, I'm so thankful for all of those no's.
So when you got to Paris, what what happened? You were there for 3 months. Talk to me about the initial, like, 2 or 3 weeks, because I'm sure there was a, like, adjustment period, kind of like a, like an, going, like, you're going cold turkey from working like crazy in a bad work environment to, for the most part, peace and quiet.
Definitely some culture shock when everyone around you doesn't speak your language, is very jarring. And this was the first time I'd ever left the country, right? But again,
Oh man.
man, it taught me something so beautiful about working with others, and just the human race, right? While I was there, for the first time in my life, it was the first time I ever saw people who were like, actually experiencing homelessness. Because growing up in metro Atlanta, at least for most of my upbringing, really didn't see a whole lot of homeless people. You'd see some every now and then, but for the most part, the only time I ever really had any interactions with someone who was homeless was if I went to a Braves game at Turner Field, right? Uh, and that would have been about it. And so slowly over time being there, I started to feel this tug on my heart about, like, man, like, I know there's people back home who are hurting. There's people back home who are homeless, right? I came back home with that, and I knew, okay, I want to, I want to use my skills to help people. I want to use the skills that I've been given to make a difference, and that's great. I know, like, obviously my wife works for a for-profit company, and she's very good at what she does, and, like, and there's not, like, but I just knew for myself, I'm like, for me to actually care about what I'm doing again, there needs to be a purpose that it's going to help somebody or make my community better or make the world at large better, right? And so that mattered to me, and so I completely made the switch of transitioning to working for nonprofits solely. And so again, you don't do it for the money working in nonprofit work.
Hmm.
And so I've done that for the past, um gosh, I guess it's been about 6 years now of working in nonprofits. And then I got to the point where I was like, okay, now I want to be able to help multiple nonprofits and small businesses. And so that's what spurred me to start my own company. And, so because I know, a lot of nonprofits don't have the budget to pay a full marketing department. They don't even have the budget to pay one, let alone one person, right? And so my heart is to be able to use my expertise and to be able to use my skill set, to help them achieve their goals.
The question I want us to look at today is, how might your current failures or closed doors actually be protecting you from something that isn't right for you? Justin had a phrase that he kept coming back to: purpose in the pain. But here's what struck me about this particular story, is that he didn't find the purpose while he was in the thick of it, right? He found it when he finally stopped running long enough to enjoy the scenery and look around. And we're all smart people. We know that challenging moments are where we learn the most. But there's a difference in knowing that intellectually and actually creating space to process what those challenges are actually trying to teach us. So my challenge to you is this: what would it take to pause? Not for 3 months in Paris necessarily, that's most than many of us can do, but for an afternoon or for an hour, and to just sit with whatever storm you're currently navigating and ask yourself, what am I learning from this so far? Not when it's over, not when you think you've reached the end, but right now, in the middle of it. Because Justin discovered, and I think we all know this deep down, is where you end up is going to be drastically different than your wildest imagination can picture right now. I never would have thought that I would still be running a web design and development company 15, 20 years later. It's mind-boggling to me. But the thing is, you'll never see that if you don't pause the noise long enough to notice what is actually happening. And that's what Justin got me thinking.